the Mangalacharanam of Pancadashi. Namah Shri Shankarananda Guru Padambujanmane Savila Samaha Moha Graha Grasaika Karmane. Panchadashi is what we call a complete grantha, going into a multitude of topics, not simply focusing on one technical area, not simply focusing on one type of sadhana that can be done, but a truly holistic compendium of knowledge. Now, having a text that's 1500 shlokas long and be that way is expected. What if I told you every single chapter, every one of the 15 chapters in this text, is also complete in itself? Where they say you can study this text out of order. Every single chapter will give you from beginning to end the introduction to understanding about myself and the world around me and that Bhagavan. It'll take me into different modes of vichara and thinking to know myself at a deeper level. And finally, a call to action, certain sadhanas that are there, as well as a deeper understanding of what it takes to be on this path to liberation, that ultimate moksha that I'm searching for. Now, in this text at this point, after going through the first 14 shlokas, we've gone through a deep understanding of how my identity has to be that Sat Chit Ananda. It cannot be anything else. Logically speaking, it cannot be anything else. And last time, through some poignant, memorable examples, we saw that when it comes to that ultimate bliss that I am, Ananda, infinitude, it's something that I know, but I don't know. I can't love something that I don't know, so I must know it in some respect. At the same time, if I were to pinpoint what this Ananda is, can't really do that. So the beautiful example given was, it's like a parent hearing their child sing in a chorus. Can they distinctly hear their child? No. But technically speaking, can they hear their child? Yes. The sound waves from their kid's mouth is hitting their ears, no matter how out of tune or in tune they sound. So clearly, this Ananda is the same way. I have love for this infinite self, unconditional love. I show it because in every action that I do, it's not just meant for this BMI or something deeper. We logically saw that also. However, the delusion, moha, that is what clouds my understanding of Ananda. Now, we saw the what, the how, the mechanism behind why that happens. That will be the focus of today in the 3 shlokas that we look at. Today, we start our journey into understanding the triad that makes up the foundation of Advaita Vedanta. This idea of Jiva, Jagat, Ishvara. Jiva being this individual self, composed of this Sthula Sharira, gross body, Sukshma Sharira, the subtle body, Karana Sharira, causal body, that reflection of consciousness, Chidabhasa, we can call it, and finally, Shuddha Atma, that substratum from which I borrow this consciousness. That substratum which is the very nature of consciousness. This makes up the Jiva. Then there's Jagat. As a Jiva, I need a sandbox, a playground, if you will, to exhaust my vasanas. If there were no Jagat, there is no way I can do that. So this world around me, composed and comprised of those 5 elements and various preponderances, that is what I utilize as this playground to exhaust my vasanas. Starting from actions that have consequence, going all the way to selfless action that destroy the current vasanas that I have, born of likes and dislikes, and create no new vasanas going forward. In a nutshell, that is the process of karma done with the intention of karma yoga. Now, after looking at Jiva and Jagat, there must be some ordainer, some ruler of this entire Jagat. There is no randomness in Sanatana Dharma. for the results that I get of my actions, that wielder is Ishvara, the third entity. Understanding in depth the intricacies and interplays and the reality and unreality lent to this Jiva, Jagat, and Ishvara is how I truly understand what exactly this Advaita philosophy is. That's the journey that we take up. What's the first shloka we look at today? Shloka number 15. Chidanandamaya Brahma Pratibimba Samanvita Tamo Rajas Sattva Guna Prakritir Dvividha Chasa. We introduced some vocabulary today as well. The first being Prakriti. Prakriti, we can say, is this matter and this creation that we find. And going forward, we'll see this Prakriti comes in two types. That's harbinger for what's to come. But here, this entire creation we could chalk up to in different ways. We can point out what the peculiarities are in this creation, what the paradoxes are in this creation. But here, for our analysis, our very starting point is this Prakriti, this nature around us, is nothing but Tamas, Rajas, and Sattva. Three shades that are given. Not that they have Tamas, Rajas, and Sattva. That would be one step we can understand. Goes further to say this matter is nothing but Tamas, Rajas, and Sattva. Nothing but these shades. So what do we mean by that? Let's unpack it now. The five elements: space, air, fire, water, earth. Different preponderances that are grossified, panchikaranam being that process. These five elements make up this entire creation. It's nothing beyond that. We look at subtle matter. Gross matter is that which makes up our bodies and all the inanimate objects around us. Subtle matter, unseen to the eye, imperceptible by any kind of instrument as well, that is what makes up this inner instrument that I have. The same five matter envelopments that make up this world, tangibly, they make up what's in my inner instrument as well. And the proof is in the pudding. Literally in the pudding. In what we consume, in what we eat, that has an effect on our mental cognition. Therefore, clearly, what is consumed at an elemental level in varying preponderances, that does have an effect on the mental well-being and my intellectual well-being. Therefore, it's nourished from the senses. Nourished from what's brought up by the senses, these five elements. Which is why when we look at Srimad Bhagavad Gita, ahara, what we consume, is so important to see, and the way it's analyzed is broken up by the gunas. Tamasic ahara, tamasic consumption, refers to those products which inhibit me at the physical and mental layer. So food that is putrid, food that is overly processed to stay pure, so to speak, that's clearly fast food. Food that inhibits my mental cognition, alcohol, drugs, all of this comes under tamasic food. Food that digests slowly and uncleanly, releasing toxins into my very body, non-vegetarian food. That's what that does. What is rajasic consumption? Rajasic consumption is food that is overly salty, overly spicy, overly sweet, any kind of extreme that's given. That leads to certain reactions as well, invoking some response or reaction from the body. That's rajasic food. Sattvic food, fresh vegetarian food, consumed 3 hours or within 3 hours from the time of production, unprocessed, unsullied by any kind of preservatives, digests cleanly and quickly, gives me fuel at the physical, mental, intellectual layer without causing agitation in any of these layers. That's sattvic food. So clearly, ahara, what I consume, is even analyzed through this three-pronged framework and clearly shows that the elements are what make up my inner and outer world completely. It's literally the stuff of this world. Now, thank God we have such a reduced view of this. Because simply looking at the gunas, and I've said this before, that is the window in to understand every single facet of my life. From the standpoint of what I am right now, ahada shows just me at the very tangible, gross physical layer, all the way to other aspects of life as well. One of my favorite texts is a section from Srimad Bhagavatam called Hamsa Gita. It's part of the Uddhava Gita, where Uddhava receives this final knowledge from Bhagavan before Bhagavan Krishna ends his avatara. So many things are taken up for our analysis right here within the framework of the gunas. All the way from what scriptures are, from what kind of company we keep, time, action, birth, meditation, rituals, all of this is analyzed through that process of the three gunas. One example that we can find right off the bat, kalaha, time. It's said that tamasic kalaha is that time after sunset. It's meant to be spent indoors, meant to be asleep at that time. Think about it. Even in the olden days when there was no electricity, you rose with the sun and you slept with the sun. Sun goes down, that means it's time to go to bed. When the sun rises, you rise as well. That was the culture. Now, because of modern comforts, we have the luxury of staying up late into the night and waking up late in the day, but that was completely tamasic time was set aside for a certain time, meant for that purpose. What is Rajasic Kalaha? Rajasic Kalaha is that time after sunrise until sunset, when we are supposed to be driven to action, driven to work, driven to produce. During that time when we're most productive, when the body, mind, intellect should be active at that time. Then what is Sattvic time? It's pretty much right now. The time that is at sunrise and at sunset. This is when those rituals were done, those basic rites and rituals done on a daily basis to start one's day and to keep one's mind cleansed and ready for the action that is to come and to wind down from the day as well. So many would ask, when I first set this class, first reaction was, man, 6:30 a.m., I think there's a typo. I think you meant p.m. I said, no, I did mean a.m. And then it was, are you serious? Is this just like a recording, or are you expecting people to join? Are you just playing a recording at this time? I said, no, we're going live. We go live every time. And to prove that here, let me show you. Right now, it is 6:45 a.m. right now. So it was met with a lot of just surprise. Chicks were jarred, saying, are you serious right now? This is a time for learning and knowledge. If I had it my way, if all your schedules really lined up the right way, I wouldn't have class at 8 p.m. on a Monday night. That's time to wind down for the night. Because of scheduling issues and the lifestyles that we have and being after work and school and everything, we can't but meet at that time. That happens to be what we need to do. But ideally, this kind of learning takes place early in the morning, setting up our day for a good day of productivity with a healthy dose of satsang. So you see, every part of life, from consumption to the time to do things, everything has these three shades of sattva, rajas, and tamas. Thank God we have one framework and one framework only to look at to really analyze all of these deeper things in our life. Because imagine if there was a complicated kind of framework to look at, one that had many moving parts and things to remember. That would be so difficult to ascertain and understand. It simply has to be something much, much simpler. So when it comes to something even like initiation or spending time with company, that even can be analyzed into sattva, rajas, tamas. What is the intention for me getting in touch with these kind of people? What is the effect that it has on me in all three layers of my personality? What is it that it does to my idea of knowledge and what I can gain and lose? All of this can be analyzed. And the sad truth is, do we ever actually stop and think about these things? Do I think, what is the nature of my mind right now? Is it frenetic in a rajasic state? Should it be at this moment? Why am I not able to sleep at night? Why isn't tamas coming to me then? Why am I feeling rajasic at that time? Why am I not able to go about my day with energy? Why do I feel depleted? Why do I feel a mood swing where I just feel down? Why is tamas taking over when rajas should be there? In those few times when I do embark on this journey to be sattvic, why is it that tamas and or rajas take over at that time? It all comes down to lead a healthy, good life, manipulation of these gunas. Understanding they are part and parcel of my personality, of the world around me. They will always be there. How do I understand which gunas to invoke at the right time? In his Ashtottara Shatanamavalihi, one of the names of Pujya Gurudev is Gunatitaya Namaha. Guna Atita, the one who is beyond the gunas. So again, let's not miss the forest for the trees here. The point is not to always be only in sattva. For a sadhaka like you and me, beginner sadhakas, the point is to try to be in sattva as much as possible. The ultimate goal is to be beyond all the gunas. The fact that sattva itself is a byproduct of this world, in and through it, means even that must be surmounted. That's the understanding to have. Because at the end of the day, the gunas are inert by nature. I am inert by nature. So I haven't really thought about merch for Chick, but I think this one seems like a good one, especially when this is something you put on your body. This kind of a t-shirt, Inert by Nature. Sounds like a good band as well. I looked it up. There's no band called Inert by Nature, but if we ever start one for the next Yuva album, Inert by Nature sounds like a pretty good name right here. But in all seriousness, at the end of the day, you have to understand this prakriti is simply enlivened by the nature of consciousness, but inherently does not have that nature of consciousness. Meaning this body, this mind, this intellect, that which we give so much importance to, this is unreal according to the Vedantic definition of what is real and unreal. Again, to jog our memory, that which is real is present in all three periods of time. In the past, in the present, in the future. This inner instrument and this outer instrument, they are subject to change, subject to nasha, destruction completely. Therefore, they cannot exist as anything real. That which undergoes change is not present in all three periods of time, has no reality. It's simply lent that consciousness. I can never forget that as I go through this process of understanding. Inert by nature helps me understand not to get attached to this assemblage, and definitely not to get attached to the world that it interacts with. That is the very first test I have to pass in order to truly understand what this Vedantic knowledge is. Going forward then, after saying that there is this twofold nature of Prakriti, we find what that is in this 16th shloka right here. Sattva shuddhya vishuddhibhyam maya vidye cha te mate maya bimbo vashikritya tam syat sarvagnya Ishvara. Prakriti is of two types right here. The first type of Prakriti, pure Prakriti, is known as Maya. How can that be? Maya, we understand, Trigunatmika Maya. Maya is expressed through these three gunas, this entire creation. Maya, if we had to define, and this is not a cop-out, Maya is indefinable, undefinable. But we say Prakriti is also known as Maya. In what way? The fact that this creation, it must be divine. There is no other way. What's the logic? We'll introduce Ishvara in this shloka later on, but what is our definition of Ishvara? First, we have to look at that. Sanatana Dharma, our definition of Ishvara is not some remote entity. It's not some guy in the sky who's away from me, or there's the world and then there's that Ishvara. It doesn't work that way. Sanatana Dharma, the definition we lend to Ishvara is abhinna nimitta upadana karana. Karana means cause. Abhinna means unbroken. Unbroken meaning real. In what way? Unbroken means that there is no time in the past where this Ishvara is not present. Ishvara is present right now, in the present. There is no time in the future that this Ishvara is not present. Meaning, just how we looked at kalaha, time in the sense of the gunas, that proves time is a man-made construct. It's not that time was there and Ishvara was birthed from that time. No, it's the other way around. So Ishvara unbroken, abhinna. Nimitta karana, upadana karana. Upadana karana means material cause. You see clay pots, you see clay ladles, clay whatever instruments there are. The substratum for all of that is clay. Clay is the material that is fashioned into these various utilities that we find. There's also a pot maker that makes all of those things. Material is not enough. There needs to be that nimitta karana, meaning intelligent or efficient cause, to actually create those objects. Now, what is Bhagavan or Ishvara? Is he the nimitta karana, the intelligent cause that fashions this entire creation? Or is he upadana karana, that material cause that makes it up? The answer has to be both. If Bhagavan was simply upadana karana, that material that creates this world, who would be the one that actually makes it? Can't be some other entity. If we say no, Bhagavan, Ishvara is simply that nimitta karana, that efficient cause, what did he use as material then? If there's material already existing and then Ishvara came into existence, that means that there's two realities at play. That cannot be true. You're following the logic here? It just can't work that way. Meaning, if you've ever seen Forrest Gump in the closing credits, Tom Hanks in and as Forrest Gump. Similarly, Ishvara in and as this creation. Meaning he is pervading through everything because those five elements that make up, in various preponderances and gunas, this entire creation, those five elements came from that Ishvara. That is that grossification, panchikarana process that takes place. So two types of prakriti. So that pure prakriti, pure meaning product of that Ishvara that has that sattvic nature to it, that is known as Maya. Bhagavan's power, Maya. Now there's that impure prakriti, matter as well. That which is not the nature of sattva, but the nature primarily of rajas and tamas, that is that prakriti making up our bodies, minds, and intellects. That is known as avidya. Ignorance. This perfectly sums up what we are. What Bhagavan is as Ishvara is that prakriti that is vishuddha. Vishuddha of that highest sattva. Pure. That impure prakriti that you and I entail, that is the nature of ignorance. That's what the Jiva is defined as. Very important to see these definitions. That's why I've gone in depth on the shloka a little bit here. In that Brahman, with Maya, meaning with a way to express, that is that Ishvara right there. But Ishvara is not subject to Maya like you and I are. Ishvara wields that Maya as a tool. That's what makes him the ordainer of this entire Jagat right here. Now, I know we went through a lot in a very short span of time. If this doesn't totally make sense, that's fine. This will be elaborated upon as we go through the rest of this chapter. No worries there. So this Maya is magnificent. Not in a positive or negative way. Magnificent simply means it is larger than life. It is everything that we encounter as life. Nothing but this Maya. Now, the important thing to see here is this Maya is not subject to our logical understanding. This is why I cannot make sense of this world. It is ashcharya, meaning completely gobsmacking me at every single turn. There are things I could never imagine happening in Maya. Whether it's behaviors from certain people, whether it's the natural beauty of the world or the horrors and terrifying factors of the world, all of that is that result of Maya. And the reason why that's given in such depth here is, what is the focus of my growth? Is the focus of my growth predicated on trying to understand this Maya as much as I can? Or is it predicated on understanding this Maya is unreal at the end of the day? Let me rise above it. Let me understand what my true identity is. Because you look at me from lifetime after lifetime, my entire prerogative has been trying to understand this Maya and trying to control it in some way. I try to control time the best I can. I try to control people's reactions to me the best I can. I try to control my work and the results of it the best that I can. I try to control what I intake. I try to control my production. I try to control all of these things, and here I am now. My entire life, based on the systems that are at play and the conditionings that I've gone through, I have been trained to be a slave to this Maya my entire life. Think about the goals that I've had thus far. Get good grades in school. For what purpose? To go to a good college. Go to a college. Why? To get a good job. Why? To get a good salary. Why? To support myself and my family in a good way. Why? For the purpose that I can live a comfortable life. Why? Because I've been conditioned that comforts means having all these things around me. Why? Because that's what people have done since the beginning of time. That's what we call as progress. And then I go through this whole rigmarole, trying to pamper this body, mind, intellect with all of these comforts, which I have to continually pay for and work more to make sure I can maintain that, yoga and kshema. And then I wake up and I'm 65 years old. I have gone through that cycle lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, playing right into Maya's hands every single time. That's all I've done. Isn't it time that I live for something higher this time? Getting out of this seemingly never-ending cycle, away, shedding these conditionings that seem to take me over completely. Fully understanding this Maya is magnificent in many ways, but understanding that is not my identity, and the conditionings and trappings that come with it must be ripped away from my personality. That takes intelligence to navigate the right way. That takes courage to get away from the hold of Maya. That is what our entire sadhana process is all about. This is a true understanding of Jagat, the world around me. Understanding it's not just outer as layers. This very layer of body, mind, intellect, that also is the Jagat. Yes, Jiva is also part of the Jagat. Meaning anything that is beyond this pure Brahman, that which has no expression, that which has no attribute. Anything other than that is unreal and cannot be my identity and is not worth losing my mind over about the conditionings that exist. Do I have the courage to tell myself that constantly and act accordingly in this quest for moksha? So here comes the importance of Ishvara at this point. In our religion, Ishvara is not worshipped simply as a transactional method of ease of life. It's not that this is some jealous God who will smite me if he feels like I'm not doing the right thing or I'm not worshiping or I'm not pleasing him. That is not our idea of Ishvara at all. The reason why I worship Ishvara is that in this world of tangibility, where Prakriti is completely overrun, rife with tamas and rajas, Vishuddha Sattva, that highest pure sattva that I can cling on to, only comes in the form of that Ishvara. Let that be what I hold on to as I rise through the gunas to maintain a predominantly sattvic nature, eventually becoming guna atita. For that to happen, Ishvara is what I must hold on to the most. Ardent prayer, reverential devotion. This is the purpose of clinging on to that Ishvara. I am what I focus on. If my thoughts, actions, and direction, the compass of my life, if you will, lies in the modes of simply tamas and rajas, I manifest where I put my mind. That is what I will become. My disposition will be tamasic and rajasic, where I find myself just in lethargy and thinking, basic in what my goals are, simply to pamper this body, mind, intellect. Or I may find myself in rajas, looking for the highest comforts through hook or by crook, trying to understand the world around me by trying to manipulate it. What can I gain in every single situation that I find myself in? And when that's my mindset, another person's pain will even be my pleasure, because I will think, when that person's in pain and going through something, how can I leverage and utilize that pain for my own advantage? That can be done in the name of religion as well. That in those moments where people are most vulnerable, having lost a family member, having gone through some kind of terrible, tumultuous period in their lives, people can swoop in and convert people to their religions during that time. You don't believe me? I've seen it happen with my own two eyes. I was at a hospital recently after taking Brahmachari Diksha. One of our mission members had lost her husband. The family is grieving in the hallway outside the operating room where the man passed away. Out of nowhere comes this hospital-appointed chaplain trying to pass flyers to that grieving family, brochures, talking about the glory of their God. Using those moments when people are the most vulnerable to push their idea of God to simply win them over to their side. How pathetic and pitiful is that? And when you see it with your own eyes, there's a fury that sets in. There's also this great sadness that, man, look at the depravity that humans are capable of right here. In the name of God, no less. That's the worst part of it all. Meaning, despite having Ishvara in our lives and seeing that the sattva is there, Vishuddha Sattva, we will fall to the depths of tamas and rajas, where even someone else's pain is an opportunity of how can I capitalize on that for my own gain. There is nothing worse than that. A true understanding of Ishvara will only make me rise to the heights of sattva, will not push me down in any way. Religious extremism, this jingoism or dogmatic nature that so many seem to hold, making them go to this rajasic and tamasic stage, that just means there is no true understanding of what that divine is. That's all that means. So as technical as this knowledge is right here that we've gone through, Jiva means this, Jagat means this, Ishvara means this, it also tells us the purity of our religion of Sanatana Dharma. I was at a private Christian high school, non-denominational high school yesterday, talking to students. It's a very major school here in the Dallas area. And one of the questions they had was, what does proselytization look like in Sanatana Dharma? And I proudly told them, Sanatana Dharma does not believe in converting people. That is not one of our prerogatives. If you have a different belief structure than me, I respect you. I respectfully disagree with your belief structure, but that does not give me the right to kind of bully you into taking up my form of religion. If you willingly come to my beliefs, that's one thing. We can talk these things out and have a logical debate and disagreement in a civil way, There is no inferiority I inflict upon you when I try to say that what your belief system is, you should abandon that and join what I'm saying. That's not Sanatana Dharma. Sadly, no religion in the Abrahamic lens follows that same framework. We've taken that for granted now. Because our idea of Ishvara is not some Rajasic entity that has this idea of manifest destiny and just taking dominion over others. That's why I say the Hindu civilization, without a doubt, is the most refined, sophisticated civilization in human history. Not because of great inventions, that was there, but that's not the only reason why. The real reason why is there is a civility brought on how we treat others because of this intentionality of Ishvara is the nature of Sattva, let me strive towards that Sattva. When that is my true north, that is the direction I point in, I cannot help but beautify my personality, thereby having a flourishing society, thereby having a refined, sophisticated civilization. See how much is predicated just on our idea of Ishvara right here? It's not saying that, all religions are the same, everyone has a divine God, we just call them different names and forms. Nonsense, it's time to get out of that kind of thinking. That's the kind of thinking reserved for interfaith platforms when we try to impress each other. That's not what this is. We have to truly understand what our idea of Ishvara is, how that creates a code for us to live by, how that colors every part of the way I live my life. That understanding gives us this deeper connection to Ishvara. So Ishvara wields that Maya. I am simply a product of that Maya. That's the difference between me and Ishvara. Ishvara is also a conditioned entity. Anything that has any kinds of attributes to it is a conditioned entity because Brahman is the only real substratum that is unconditioned. However, Ishvara does not come from Maya. Ishvara uses that Maya to manifest in that form. There's a difference in being a wielder of something versus being subject to its whims and fancies. Going further, the final shloka we look at today. Avidya vashagah tvanyah tadvai chitriyad anekadha sakarana shariram syat prajñas tatrabhimanavan. But whenever a shloka starts with but, you know it's some bad news that's going to come up. The bad news, sadly, here is Jiva, you and me, controlled by avidya, that lower form of prakriti, tainted with rajas and tamas. We're all different because of the combinations of these three gunas in us. That's what makes us individually what we are. And in a way, thank God for that. What if we all thought the same way and acted the same way? Seems like a dystopian Netflix show, which is categorized as horror, and that's why, if everyone was the same. There are differences in us. That is owed completely to these various differences in the predominance of gunas in our personalities. Now, the statement is made not to judge others. Oh yeah, you're tamasic. Oh, you have more rajas than anything. Let's look at ourselves. Because I am the hero of my own life, of my own story. Do I understand that even I, as much as I love myself, I have the flaw of rajas and tamas in my personality? How do I deal with that? Inherently, these things will be there. Certain vices, certain temptations, certain triggers. Is it that I simply accept myself as I am and refuse to grow? Or am I able to pinpoint, using this gunas framework, which parts of my personality are rajasic and tamasic, and how I can raise that to sattva? For example, I can be a very social person. Tamasic way of being a social person is vulgarity that's used in conversations, or simply trying to get to know people for basic purposes, carnal pleasures, things like this. A Rajasic realm that takes place in being social is gossiping, controlling others, subjugating others. It can be in that layer. The sattvic element that comes in being social is bringing people together. Common platforms, common ways of thinking, righteous living. Can I bring people together? That's the greatest I can do in a sattvic way when it comes to being social. Like that, analyzing various parts of my life. Tendencies that I have, how can I become more sattvic? Simply not leveraging in a rajasic way to benefit myself. That's what's given here as deeper. All the while understanding, as a jiva, I need to grow to become as sattvic as possible, but that it's natural to have tamas and rajas mostly in my personality. That is by design, that is what I am as a jiva. So beating myself up for having negative thoughts, flogging myself for having moments of anger, insecurity, or anxiety, that is not the intelligent way of living. Making this assumption that unrealistically, that I will feel no pain, that I will feel no sadness, there will be no sorrow, there will be no negative tendencies brought out in me, it's natural. Because I've been conditioned for so long to be that way. Furthermore, as a jiva, tamas and rajas is what makes up my personality. So the shock at the fact that, oh, I'm not happy most of the time, I won't be as a jiva. Can I get out of that jivatva? Can I adopt that sattva of Ishvara more and more? That comes with that connection to Bhagavan, to that higher. That's why that's given as such a good recommendation, suggestion. Sadhana is nothing but that. Connecting with that sattva in me, reflected from that Ishvara, may that be the quest that I take up in this journey towards moksha. And avidya, that lower prakriti, characterized again by rajas and tamas, that is not knowing my true nature. That simply is what avidya is. Let's not make it more than it is. But the good news is, not knowing my true nature is a temporary state that I can rise out of. Through this process of knowledge, jnana, and vichara, deep inquiry, holding on to Shastra, holding on to the words of the Guru, in our case, the words of Puja Gurudev, we can rise out of this. As a recap today, we've gone through some pretty heavy subjects. Introducing these three concepts of Jiva, Jagat, Ishvara, this framework helps us understand and go through a checklist. Understanding where I am right now, due to that influence of Maya and me being a product of that Maya. Understanding the purpose of this Jagat. Purpose of this world is it's that playground where I can exhaust my vasanas, ordained by this Ishvara. Not simply as some authority that gives me merits and demerits at a whim, but is what I strive for. That Vishuddha Sattva, that Sattva I want to inculcate, is exclusively the domain of that Ishvara. Let me try to bring that and imbibe that into my own personality. And that comes through the ardent worship of that Ishvara, connecting with that which is the most sattvic. In a nutshell, that is the journey I must take. So with that, we'll end for today. I think that's enough mental gymnastics we've gone through today. Hopefully I'm not going too quickly with the pace. It's going at the right pace. And we will meet next week to go further into this beautiful, beautiful text. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Guru Pyo Namaha Harihi Om.